everybody, and welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast. I'm Alec Cabrera. Mike Wolfgang will be joining us here in a couple of minutes for the Tuesday edition of the Casual Sports Podcast here on your sports network. Hope you're all having a phenomenal Tuesday afternoon, as it's a cold one here in the Valley today. Going to get colder again tomorrow. In fact, the high today, 45. It's only a high of 43 tomorrow. We're going to get rain overnight, potentially some snow. They were calling for it list last night. I don't know if we got any. I think it came about 1 o'clock. If there was any, it was melted by the time I got out to my car this morning. I'm all for winter. I love winter. I love that time of the year. But I think it's calling a little bit too early. Next week, we're going to get back to the 70s. It'll be a nice week next week. So don't put your shorts and T-shirts away just yet. We got another week of this, of some warmer weather coming back. Don't need to break out all the winter clothing here just yet, unless you're going to be out at games this Friday night. Then you might need to bundle up just a little bit. It's been fairly cold these last couple weeks at night, so if you would rather not go out though into the cold and sit home and enjoy the game in your lazy boy recliners or on your couch, wherever you may be, well, then you're in the perfect spot. Your sports network has you all covered all Friday long. And from this past Friday, we'll go ahead and talk about some more games. Covered 16 on the show yesterday, from Boardman on down to United, Brookfield, Garfield, Fitch, Campbell, Newton Falls. We got a bunch in there yesterday. So we're going to go through the next 16. Starting off first, some more NE8 action. Before we get into this, what a great conference this has been this year. I mean, very competitive. Every game has seemingly mattered. And you look around, you go to the, into the MVAC or into the EOAC, and you go in, you go, does this game really do anything for the conference? Does it do anything for the teams? Well, every game matters. It's like, I mean, it's not a game that's going to garnish, any big attention and draw some big numbers like you would see here in the NE8. I feel like every week we go into the NE8, you don't really know what's going to happen. A lot of question marks. I mean, Girard just went down for the third time in 4 weeks. Struthers and Poland are now just slicing up every ranking. They're just flying up the polls. And you have Hubbard, who's seemingly on this roller coaster ride at the end of the season. Who knows how they're going to finish this week? I mean, if we get the better version of them, they might have something to do against South Range. But, at their worst, they're going to get blown out, just like we saw with Lakeview in the South Range game that we talked about on yesterday's show. So the NE8 match we're talking about this time, however, Niles Hubbard, and a 37-20 in favor of the Eagles of Hubbard. And, it's kind of what we expected in this game. This is one of the few NE8 matchups where you win in and you were like, okay, yeah, I had a good inclination on what's going to happen. Niles had lost 5 straight. They're kind of the one team in the NE8 that you were looking at and you went, probably don't have to worry about them doing anything too much. Maybe them, maybe Lakeview. But the top 6 teams in that conference have been spectacular so far this season. I mean, all but 2 teams in this conference have winning records. And I mean, how can you not be impressed with that? Now, they're when everyone has such a good record, you have to have 1 or 2 teams that have kind of been on the bottom side of that. And a reason why you see those teams with those big records and such great records. You have to have a couple bad to even out with how good you are. Obviously, that's how records work. Not everyone can have a winning record every year, unfortunately. I mean, that'd be pretty nice. Getting an entire conference into the postseason, I mean, that's the way to do it. That's some conference superiority right there. But, this Hubbard team, they're coming off, I would say, a strong performance, 37-20. Following the 49-14 loss to Girard, I thought it was a much-needed win for this Hubbard group. One that I think there was a little bit of a question mark. What were they going to do in this game? It wasn't necessarily a matter of were they going to get it done, but just what were they going to do? How was their defense going to hold up? Well, they held Niles to 11 rushing yards, 120 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, and an interception. There was a rushing touchdown. Antoine Garner ran it 10 times, got 1 yard, and got a touchdown. Well, all right. Nathan Coots ran it once, got 10 yards. Anthony Budak rushed it twice, went nowhere. So you have to give a lot of credit to Hubbard's rush defense, which, going up against South Range next week, I think is going to be important for them. That's definitely a key factor in that game. You have to slow down South Range's rush attack to give yourself any chance, because they're as great as they are through the air. It's the ground game that sets that up and allows South Range to be as good as they are. You have to have balance. And if Hubbard can go in there next week and take away that balance, kind of, shoot one of the legs off the horse, then they have an opportunity to catch that steed stumbling. So, this is a good win for Hubbard. They didn't put up any stats on this game for me to, break down, at least not yet. But overall, I have to be very impressed with Hubbard. And unfortunately, the one trend that we've seen since week 3, they've gone a win-loss every week since week 3. They won in week 3 against Howland, then they lost. Then they win, then they lose. Then they win, then they lose, then they win. And then here in week 10, unless they can break this, pattern they've been in, South Range is going to go in and they're going to win. And while we haven't seen Hubbard lose bad outside of Girard, we saw them lose bad to Girard, and we saw Girard lose bad to South Range. So by that thought, you probably go, South Range may be having their way with Hubbard this week, and it might not be all that pretty looking. Either way, it's been a season that likely is going to be good enough for a team like Hubbard to get into the postseason. I mean, I think that's kind of what we're all waiting for is, where are they going to, finally get in? Where's that spot going to be for a team like Hubbard? And for more on that, let's bring him in. Mike Wolfgang, welcome into the show here, the Tuesday edition. Talking about the Hubbard-Niles game, really now I'm moving over into Hubbard and what this potentially can be for the postseason. Have a 6-3 record, but they're going up against South Range in the final week of the season.
I think we talked about that last week. That's a pretty tough way to end it out. Obviously, against Niles, you're playing them as a struggling team this year, but that's a tall task. When you still got some things on the line and you got to go play South Range, it's pretty tough to kind of close things out. At South, or actually it's in Hubbard too. So at least you got that, but South Range is hard to play anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, and South Range has been just incredible this season. I mean, they have taken over pretty much every game by a steep margin. So it took me a minute to find this, but I finally got it pulled up. Hubbard has clinched a playoff spot at the moment. They are currently sitting at the 12 seed. If they lose in the final week, they will, if they lose to South Range, which seems likely, they will not play a home game in the postseason. If they pull off the win, they can end up with a high of 4th, but they could also finish at 14th. So there's a huge margin. This team in the final week can either be a 4 seed or a 16 seed or anywhere in between, but they will be in the postseason.
I mean, when you still got stuff like that to play in for, to have a home game in the playoffs, that's a lot to try to play for. Because Alec, when I pick these games, that's a comfort zone of being at home, and especially in the playoffs when the competition ramps up. So, I mean, when you got that much on the line, it's still kind of slim. Even if you do kind of pull this one out, that's something that they got to play for.
Niles, with this loss as well, have been mathematically eliminated from the playoffs as well. So, our next matchup, Mike, Louisville, kind of a bit of surprise, but they go and defend home field against Notre Dame Cathedral Latin, make it a double overtime performance in which they do pull out the win, 24-17 in double overtime. I mean, what a game for that. I mean, Louisville, 10 points in the first 4 quarters. They didn't score in the first half. It was 3-0 going into halftime. NDCL was leading. NDCL gets a touchdown in the third quarter. Louisville gets a field goal, so it's a touchdown game. And you go into the fourth. Louisville gets the touchdown. They tie it up, forced to overtime. Both teams score in the first overtime. And then Louisville comes out with the victory in the final second overtime. And they did it on just 88 rushing yards. They went for 141 passing yards. But what really helped in the victory, Notre Dame could not pass the football. They were held to 42 passing yards by this Leopards defense. And the one spot Notre Dame did do really well in, pretty much all the yards came on the ground, 235 rushing yards. And when you go into a second overtime, Mike, I think that's what really killed Notre Dame Cathedral and they could not keep up with the balanced attack of Louisville. And it finally pulled through there in the end.
Hey, you know what? Defending a running attack when it's strong, that's hard to do consistently for 4 quarters, let alone 2 overtimes, like you just said. It's they're constantly coming at you downhill. That's hard to beat you up, first of all, and it kind of wears you out that you're on the field for a long time. It takes a lot of time off the clock. So, but this one was a good one. I mean, pretty much teams matched point for point until that final score. So, So yeah, it was pretty much a good double to overtime game in this week 9.
Yeah, and Louisville forced 2 fumbles in this game, so it helped them to go a long way. Both teams struggled on third down, so I mean, definitely it was a battle of defenses, and ultimately, it was Louisville that came out. I think a big reason on why they were able to pull this out, Mike, you and I have talked about it all season, the strength of schedule they've had to go against. They have taken on guys that are bigger than them, stronger than them, and faster than them in pretty much every single week. So you come into a game where you're actually evenly matched against somebody, and you get late in that game, you have that edge up. You've been going up against teams that have been running you over, and now you're in a battle where you can actually match up with the guy across from you. I think they finally had that confidence of, hey, we've been in much worse spots than this season. We're in an opportunity right now. We can go out there and do something. We can pull through this and have some fun here. Let's go and see what we can do. I think that was a big part of why they were able to kind of make this run and turn things around in that game, and why they ultimately came out with the win.
Well, to kind of expand on what you're saying is that they have had a tough year, that 2-7 record, but in week 2 they had an overtime game, so they've been in overtime before this season, and the game before in week 8 against Franciscan, that was a touchdown game they lost by. So they've had some rough games, but they were kind of quick going into that that final, that double overtime game.
Strong game for Louisville, and at the moment, just kind of having to hope in this final week. They do not control their own destiny. They are 3-6. They have a matchup against Lindsley. It's a home game for them, and obviously, I mean, they just picked up a win at home. 2 of their 3 wins have come at home this season. They've only lost twice at home. So definitely a better team at home when they've been on the road. But they're an 18 seed. They're going up against 6-1 Lindsley, and they don't control their destiny. With a win, they potentially, not a very strong likelihood, could move up to 14, 15, or 16. However, if they lose, they are done. Season is over. So it's gonna be exciting. Final week for them. But it's going to be an uphill battle to see what they can do.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, I was talking about the wrong team when I was running through that schedule. I had a Notre Dame Cathedral schedule pulled up. So
I was gonna say, I'm like, that's not the schedule. I'm not saying anything, but
no, you're good. I caught it.
All right. Well, next team, East Liverpool. The Potters pull off a little bit of an upset here. They go and take down Oak Glen. Obviously, I mean, Oak Glen came in 2-5. East Liverpool came in at 1-7. So they're not a huge upset, but I think in the terms that they went up against a team with some fresher legs, out-of-state team. Now, Oak Glen did have to come into East Liverpool, but I think part of the reason why, I kind of say it's an upset, the margin of victory for East Liverpool in this, they win by 32 points in a game that I think a lot of people expected to be at least fairly close. And it was for 2 quarters of football. It was 13-6 going into the half. Well, then the Potters go ahead and drop 30 points by the end of the third quarter. So it's 30-6, and 30-12, because Oak Glen got something back. And they decided that 30-12 just wasn't good enough, and they added 2 more touchdowns. They put up 31 points in the second half against Oak Glen, and I think that just very impressive to see. And, have to give a huge shout out to the Potters for taking that game. I mean, they held Oak Glen to just 116 yards in total offensively. That's insane. I mean, we haven't seen the Potters play like that all season. I mean, they fumbled the ball 3 times and still put up 44 points because they got a fumble on the other side and an interception thanks to their own defense. I mean, they weren't great on third down. Neither was Oak Glen. And it's amazing, see some of the stats that, they put up there, that they were able to put up 44 points in this game, despite really having a bad day. I mean, against any other good team, they would have been just run over, but they caught the right wind at the right time against the right team.
Yeah, and I think when we were previewing this game last week, we thought, matchup of 2 teams that haven't had a great year, didn't know what to expect, and we were having a hard time picking that one. But, for East Liverpool to come out and put up that many points unanswered like that and to win 44-12, they, I know they've got one more game left, but as things stand right now, it's been a down year for them. So that's kind of something else. We've been talking a lot of teams about a lot of times over the last week or so about teams that are having bad years, kind of finding things to bring in next year. I think that one's got to be one that you could definitely bring in next year on the side of East Liverpool.
Yeah, it's one that you're going to need. Hopefully one that they can, keep some momentum going off of. and we'll see what they can do. They have another West Virginia team this week, so Potter's back-to-back against WV. I'll take it.
Yeah, we'll see.
Another team, though, in contention for the postseason at the moment, the Salem Quakers, coming off a strong win against the 1-7 Marlington at the time. They pull it 41-7 over the Dukes. And it's a good bounce back win for these Quakers after a loss to Carrollton, a close one the week before, win against Minerva, and then another close loss to Alliance. But Mike, they've fallen into the same kind of rhythm that I was talking about a little bit ago with Hubbard. They've gone win-loss, 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 win. And you look ahead on the schedule next week with West Branch, and, you probably want to go ahead and already say loss. I mean, I expect a good game. I expect Salem to stay in that thing. I don't expect it to be a blow-up by any stretch. But, that West Branch team has been very strong, and it's potentially a preview of what the postseason could look like. West Branch is a 1 seed. At the moment, Salem is an 8 seed. They have clinched a playoff spot with a win against West Branch in the final week. They can be as high as a 2 seed, as low as a 10. With a loss, they can be as high as a 6 and as low as a 16. So a huge disparity on which way they can go based on this final week. But, I mean, can you imagine West Branch knocks them off here in week 10, and then they have to face each other again in week 11 for the start of the postseason?
And you know what? To kind of go off the pattern of what you're saying with Salem as far as how their schedule's gone, you start at they're in the playoffs, like you said. That's a good thing. You start the year 3-0, and you've kind of, like I said, been hit or miss since then. And you look at their 3 losses, they lose to Kent Central Catholic by 3, Alliance by 11. That's 11 points is not bad. And then this past weekend, it's at 5 points. So their losses have been close. I mean, I think this is the part where you're in the playoffs, like I said, that's a good season, but you're not really playing as consistent as you want to be going into the playoffs. I mean, you're going to be playing better competition.
Yeah, and just continue to add this, it was a really great performance for Salem, but it's also a score we expected from Salem, and we didn't expect this to be a close game. It was supposed to be a blowout, and it was. So expectations were met. I don't know if they were all that exceeded, however. I mean, they put up 330 yards, 150 passing, 180 rushing. They had really good field position all night, so you have to give some love to that defense. But I don't know. There's something about it. I feel like the game could have still gone better for Salem. They put up 330 total yards, and they had 2 turnovers, and that's the big one. They were really great on third down, 4 for 7. But their inability to hang on to the football is going to cost them come postseason. You go up against a Marlington defense like this, who obviously isn't great. They'd allowed 265 points all season long in 9 games. That's almost 30 points a game they were giving up. And you allow a team like that to take the ball away from you multiple times. It's a game for Salem that I just have to look at and go, you won. The scoreboard looks good. The stats don't. The stats paint a very different picture from what the scoreboard tells us for this Salem game.
And again, I know we keep talking about the weather and stuff like that, but you're gonna have to be able to hold on the ball when things get slick in the playoffs when it's late October, early November. So that's something else you got to kind of key in on practice and stuff like that and during the games.
And this week's going to be a really good one for them to kind of get that practice in. I mean, it's a high of 44 degrees today, 15-mile-an-hour winds. It's going to rain overnight, so you're going to have slick fields tomorrow for your Wednesday practices. Once again, 14-mile-an-hour winds. Thursday, it's going to get a little bit warmer, but throughout the middle of the day when you could be practicing into the evening, you're going to be about the game time temperature for Friday night. So at the moment, we're seeing temperatures around 4 or 5 o'clock of 50 degrees on Thursday. So when you do that final walkthrough before your game day on Friday, you're going to be seeing about the same temperatures you will come kickoff. At kickoff Friday night right now, they're expecting about 52 degrees, 8-mile-an-hour winds, and at the moment, they say no chance of rain. However, it's Ohio, and we've seen rain continue just to get pushed back on the day, so it could go from raining tonight into raining Thursday night or something. So I think it's going to be a really good week of preparation to get them ready for that kind of weather game, especially against West Branch, who we know is a throwing team. I saw some good throws this past week. Gerard and Struthers, they were both able to throw the ball fairly well, better than I expected, as a matter of fact. But again, I mean, we have seen a couple of teams struggle. Wellsville almost upset Valley Christian because of it. And with Hubbard's defense, I mean, if you can get a couple of takeaways, set your offense up well, it can be a good moment for him. Same for I mean Salem. They got a good defense too. They can get those takeaways from West Branch. They set themselves up well for good opportunity football. However, week 1 of the postseason, Mike, it's looking like we might get some good weather up into the 60s at least for that Friday night next week. So week 1 of the postseason might not be as freezing.
No, and they're saying that too for even this last week of the season. That it's been chilly these first 2 days of this week, but it looks like the end of the week it's going to start getting 60s, 70s again. So we'll see how things are for this weekend moving forward.
Got to remember though, those nighttime temperatures, they start dropping.
Oh, they drop. Oh yeah, for sure.
It's going to be fun one in the booth.
Yep.
Luckily, I'm over a rain field over here this Friday. They got a heater in that press box. I remember I'm going to be nice and fine.
You're all set. You don't have to dress that well.
They got one like right down by your feet too, so you just get this warm front across the front of your body. It's wonderful. Can't wait to go down there.
Because that's what hits me first is the feet. That's what hits me first.
Yeah, and it's Cheney versus East, so I'm not going to be there very long either.
There you go.
Cheney should make this a quick night for me. I'm down the street, so I can walk to the stadium. I'm so close at the moment, so it's going to be a good weekend.
Yeah.
It was a good weekend for these Springfield Tigers yet again. 5 wins in a row, Mike. They do it against Jackson Milton. 33-7 this game went. And I think that's the number that surprises me, that it was so one-sided. It was 20-0 at halftime for Springfield. They go up 28-0. They get 6 more points in the fourth quarter before Jackson Milton finally gets their touchdown late in the game. And I think you really just all have to kind of take a step back and you go, this was a great performance for Springfield. Very impressed with what they were able to do. They only had 2 penalties on the entire night. Colton Rourke went 8 for 10 for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns. Running the football, they combined for 132 with 3 rushing touchdowns. And Dylan Sheely decided to go off. 3 receptions, 103 yards, and both of the passing touchdowns from Colton Rourke. It was a great game for this team. They also had 4 tackles for loss. La Savita got in there for a sack. Sean Guerrero got in for an interception. They had a fumble recovery also by Sean Guerrero. This was a phenomenal game. And then not to mention, Hayden Pavlock returning the football, 6 kickoff returns. Pardon me. He kicked it off 6 times. He booted this thing for an average of 40 on the kickoffs. That's a really strong number for a kicker at this level to boot the ball 40 yards pretty much every time. Had a long of 45. It was overall a great night for this Springfield Tiger team, and they are a whole new monster, Mike, here at the end of the season. I got a feeling they might be turning some heads in the next couple of weeks for these first two rounds of the postseason. I think they can make some noise. Obviously, they got experience. Lowest they can be right now is a 10 seed. They are almost virtually guaranteed a home spot for the postseason, and they have Sebring this week, so it's looking good.
Well, that's where I was going to go first on the Springfield side of things. Is that obviously those first 4 games tough. I mean, South Range, Brookfield, Lowville, and Geneva. That can't get any harder. But again, and we were all kind of thinking at that point, like, they played a hard schedule. Don't write them off yet. We're thinking, we thought they were going to wake up at some point, and they had. They ripped off 5 in a row, and they've been some of them against good teams. Middle Ridge is a good team. Jackson Milton's got a good record. I mean, they haven't been doing this against slouches, and their offense has woken up in these games. So I think that's a credit to where Springfield was at to start the year and where they're at now. They turn things around, and I think that's what you after a slow start, it's worrisome, but you got chances every week to kind of turn things around. That's what they've done.
And I continue to be kind of bewildered by Jackson Milton and what has kind of turned out to be a disappointing finale. And I say that mainly because I called that week 5 game between them and Lowellville, and it came in the battle of the undefeateds, and people were saying, "Oh, Jackson Milton, they can go upset Lowellville and Vinnie Balone, and they can go do this, they can do that." Lowellville always falls off once they get into the conference. Jackson Milton's going to be a really good team this year. That was the conversation week 5, and I was so ready for that game to be hard nosed, tough as nails, and it ends up going obviously the way it did with Balone setting the records, and I think ever since then it has been a confidence shocker for Jackson Milton. And I think it's something when they had 9 touchdowns put up against them, I don't think they've been
through the air team. Too.
Right. It wasn't in ground. They got just torched running down the sideline every play. And, they bounced back well the next week. It wasn't like they went in there and they had a terrible game the next week. They beat Sebring 41-0. And you kind of prepared, and you went, all right, they're 5-1. Now they go take on Mineral Ridge. We just saw Mineral Ridge get, upset the week prior. Thought maybe, hey, back to back, they got themselves a shot. And then Ridge wins 42-7. And you go, what? Why can Jackson Milton not win important games? Why can't they compete in important games?
Yeah.
That's the other biggest problem is we see them play really good football, and then they go up against, albeit really, really good teams in Lowellville, Ridge, and Springfield, and they basically lay an egg. They go out the week after Ridge, and they win again. They win a game against a team that I thought probably on a similar level to them, and I thought Jackson Milton was about a touchdown better, and that's ended up being the score. It was 7-0 over Waterloo, and that was on the road. Tough environment. But you look at the back half of the season, Jackson Milton has played 4 home games and 1 road game in the last 5. They've only won at home once in those 4 home games. And I just continue to look at this Jackson Milton team, and I'm constantly waiting for them to be better than I think they are. And it hasn't happened so far. Because I feel like this team can be a really good team. I've seen them. I didn't think that they had anything bad. I didn't think they were a bad team. I didn't think they were a superstar team that's going to win the title, obviously. But I thought that this was a team that could go out against a Ridge or a Springfield and make some noise after I saw them in Lowellville. And you saw them in those games, and it was quiet. Their offense could have been reading a lullaby. And now you look at them, they're a 13 seed, despite being 6-3. There's teams ahead of them with losing records in the rankings at the moment. Garfield Heights Trinity is number 12. They're 4-5. Middlefield Cardinal at 5-4 is ranked 2 spots higher than Jackson Milton. And you look around, well, the 3 teams around them in Trinity, Southeast Ravenna, and Pymatuning Valley each control their destiny. And yet, even at 7-3, if Jackson Milton goes in and beats McDonald in week 10, they might still miss the postseason. And it's due to the fact that they had such an easy ride early on. Then they got into a game that they finally got tested, got shut down, and they lost confidence. And if they had beaten one of those 3 teams, they'd be in the conversation in the postseason, potentially in a top 8 spot. And people would be talking about them here in Division 7 as a legitimate team that you have to look at to make a deep run towards a district crown.
And that's the frustrating part is when you're a good team, but it's just those little questions. And when it's a big game, you haven't found ways to break through with certain teams or certain level of opponents. And like you said, that could cost them at the end of the year, and it very well could cost Jackson Milton after this. Even if they, what happens here with McDonald, you don't know what's going to happen with them. So if that's the reason that they don't make it, then you're looking back at the end of the year and saying, man, we missed a real opportunity with just one other game that we haven't found a way to break through with.
Yeah. And it's a week 10 matchup that, you go into, you see Jackson Milton 6-3, McDonald 3-6. I think any other team you would go, yeah, 6-3 should beat 3-6. I'm not confident with what Jackson Milton is putting on the field at the moment. Granted, we look at this, it's a game they should win. Games they should win, they have win. We'll see what they can do. But McDonald just beat Waterloo, who was in a 7-point game against Jackson Milton, 28-6. We'll talk about this game more on Thursday or Friday. But I think it's one you really have to keep your eyes on.
Yeah.
Next team up, Cheney, coming off what was a tight win. I think a little bit unsuspecting. The Warren G. Harding Raiders kept it close against Cheney. Cheney, however, does pull out the win 21-14. And I think you really have to continue just to say, man, that Harding defense is really good. If they had any offense over there, Mike, they'd be a stellar team this year. But for Cheney, you survive another really good defensive test. They've had a number of them. I mean, Canfield and Ursuline gave them everything they could handle and then some. Cardinal Mooney even showed them, a bit of a fight. Now Harding's done a little bit something. They're going to win this weekend against Youngstown East. I don't have any quarrels with saying that. They're a strong team. They should go and make some waves here in Division 3 postseason. I think that they have plenty of talent on this team to make a run. But I think the one thing I kind of am not confidently sold on with Cheney, maybe I will be after I see them in person. Probably the one thing I haven't seen this team yet in person, and I will this weekend, is in those tight games. Obviously, they won the one against Canfield, lost to Ursuline. What are they going to do with this come postseason? Because you go up against a good team, a good defense in Harding, and you only scored 21 points, and it's this low scoring of a game. If this was a team to say, go up against Chardon, who we know is good on both sides of the football, well, what would they be? How would that play out? Would their offense be able to do anything? Obviously, they have a strong defense on their own, but, is it going to be good enough to say go into the state championship and beat Hamilton Baden, who's undefeated and at the moment is the best team in Division III? I think there's still a lot of questions for me. Is this Cheney team, have they played enough big games to make this a reality for the postseason? Because obviously everyone's looking at Cheney and they want to see, hey, this Cheney program has been back, 4 years in the conversation for a state title. I think everybody wants to see that kind of underdog run kind of come to a finale and make it all the way and have that storybook ending. I'm not sold. I know they've beaten Canfield and they were in a close game against Ursuline, but seeing this Harding game is one that really stands out for me. The fact that, you look at the rest of their schedule outside of those games, and especially the one you circle with Mooney and you go, that Mooney game, they went up against a good defense and that team didn't have any offense. They played some good defenses in Boardman. They got it done. Poland was not a good team when they played them. They would be now. That'd be a fun matchup, I think, to repeat. But I hate to say an easy schedule because obviously they've had hard games. But I think there's been games you look at and you put too much stock behind. And I almost, like Nick Saban says, the rat poison, the media, the hype, everything surrounding the team. I have a feeling Cheney is going to succumb to the rat poison in the playoffs. And maybe that'll wash away when I see them this weekend. I'll see them Friday, and I'll come back with a fresh opinion on Monday, see what I feel. But at the moment, looking numbers-wise, I think that they might succumb to that rat poison.
The eye test always matters, right?
Right. And that's the one thing. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, and I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm waiting, but I'm on the edge of that of, I don't know, something seems a little fishy here.
That's the way I personally haven't seen Cheney this year, so I'm in the same boat up until when you see them this weekend. But that's personally how I usually look at things. I look at numbers too, but I'm not a huge number guy. The eye test, and that's what I kept saying with a lot of teams this year. And for what you were saying with Cheney, I think a lot of big games, sure, but they've had a lot of good matchups. I don't know if I'd call them like big marquee games. Like you said, they had the Mooney win, that was good. They had the Canfield win, that was good. The Ursuline win only lose by 3. And this Harding team, I'm not going to overreact to this close score because I know they had the rough start. Harding, this is a team I kept saying after this first few weeks that I think they're better than what their record is. And I think we all know that they are, but lose by a touchdown, like you said, it could have been a little bit more, but we know the strong defense Harding has. So I'm not going to overreact too much to that one, but hey, it's when it's playoff football, the question you just raised, that could be raised for a lot of other teams, and I think Cheney's one of them.
I think Canfield might be the other.
Yeah.
I only like Canfield a little bit more because we know they have a Division I FBS quarterback on their roster in Brock Lowry. And anytime you have that at a high school level, future FBS quarterback, then you give some attention. I don't know this Cheney team. They got a couple of FBS players in there. I know Hewlett's going. I think Cincinnati and Dejan Waller should be going. I believe Toledo last time I saw, though. I think I heard he might be going elsewhere. Don't quote me on any of that.
They're talented. We know that.
Right. They're a very talented team. And obviously I saw them last year. I was impressed. And I was confused last year how they ended up with the record that they did. And I was a little confused that they've ended up with the record that they had. So maybe call me a hater against the Cowboys. Maybe that's what I should be called here. But I think they're going to have a strong weekend. And I know this is going to be the eye test against Youngstown East. So I should see a lot of really great plays. That's going to be my eye test, is they should go out here and dominate. And in my opinion, East should not get a first down in this game.
Yeah.
If Cheney is as good as I think the numbers want to say they are, East should not get a first down in this football game.
He shouldn't do much of anything.
Right. Speaking of that Waterloo team that I had mentioned a brief bit ago, they come off that loss to McDonald 28-6 in a game I'm a little disappointed in for Waterloo. I thought they were a little less than average, but it wasn't that this was a close game and, McDonald got a touchdown late or something and it made the score look worse than it was. It was 28-6 at the halftime. And then neither team did anything for the rest of the game. And I just look at that and then go, what? How you get 21, especially 28 points from McDonald in the first half, then they don't score again. But Waterloo only getting 6 points in this game, I think, is part of what baffles me. I mean, I know their offense hasn't been great, but I think I was still expecting more. But they allowed 241 rushing yards. Mike, they didn't have over 100 yards of their own in any statistical category, and they turned the ball over twice. They were 20% on third down. Waterloo completely shut down in this game. This was not a Waterloo team that, we've seen throughout the season. I mean, I know they're 3-6 and they were going up against a 2-win team on the other side. But I thought that this was a Waterloo team that, kind of similar along the lines of Jackson Milton, had the hard games, especially at the back half of the season that they just couldn't get over. I mean, they lost to United, Malvern, Lowellville, Springfield, and Jackson Milton, and now McDonald. And I think you look at that and you go, well, outside of McDonald, that's a tough schedule to run through with those losses. And they won the games they should have, and they lost the games that probably should have up until this point against McDonald. It was a game that, when we say a team is better than their record, you go up against a 2-6 team like McDonald, I think you're kind of expected to win.
I think you're expected to win too, but it's when you give up that many points in the first half, when you don't really do much of anything on either side of the ball, you're not. I mean, I know they tightened things up defensively, give them credit for that, but also give McDonald credit too, because they came out and set the tone pretty early. We always talk about setting the tone, putting up that many points in the first half. But when you do that, I don't care if you're on the side of Waterloo. I don't care if you're playing the McDonald teams that's not having a great year, but we still think is competitive. They usually are.
Yeah.
I don't care who you're playing, whether good, bad record, whatever, mediocre. You're not going to win games when you give that many points in the first half and you don't do really much of anything on the other side of the ball. So that's my takeaway for Waterloo.
However, Waterloo not out of it just yet. If they can pull off a win this weekend, they have the chance. It's not a guarantee, but they could end up as high as a 13 seed if they can upset Ridge in week 10. Huge upset that would be. That would be huge. And with the offense we've seen in the last 2 games, I mean, they put up 6 points and allowed 35 the other way. I'm not overly confident in Waterloo to get it done, but crazier things have happened. I would say probably Springfield upsetting Mineral Ridge and winning 5 in a row. Probably a little bit more unexpected than maybe Waterloo going out here and doing this.
Yes.
On the side of McDonald, though, like you're talking, tone setter. When you can go out there and you can do that in the first half. I think you now have to look at McDonald this weekend again and go, hey, can they go in and can they upset Jackson Milton? I think you realistically can say
it's possible.
Yeah, I think they can with, the 7-0 game that Jackson Milton held over Waterloo. And then you see them put up 28 in the first half against Waterloo. There is a comparison to be made there. And there's an argument, I think, as well for McDonald to go into this weekend and be looked at and say, hey, don't count them out just yet. And if they can pull off that win against Jackson Milton in week 10, well, McDonald can find themselves all the way up at 11 is the highest they can go. However, there still is an opportunity that they don't make it even if they win. So there's a large disparity of where they can finish. Part of that is he didn't win enough games during the rest of the season. A 4-6 record, you don't control your own fate. You do to an extent, right? Because you have to win to give yourself that opportunity. But just if you win doesn't guarantee you anything for the postseason.
Nothing's guaranteed.
Week 11 is truly up for grabs. Division 7 still has, especially Region 21 or 25, pardon me, has spots 11 through 16 still open. There are 7 spots available to make it into the postseason right now. Pardon me, 6 spots. I can do math, I promise.
You sure?
There's 6 spots in this postseason still available. And that it opens the door. Now there's 5 teams that control their own destiny: East Canton, Western Reserve, Catholic Central out of Steubenville, David Anderson's Lisbon, and Conotton Valley. They control their own destiny. If they win, they're in. And obviously, that takes up 5 of the 6 spots. So that puts McDonald in a fight with Fairport, Harding, Wellsville, Wyndham, in Greenwich South Central for that final spot. It's a hard ask right now. And if South Central wins, they're probably in. If Wyndham wins, basically, if anybody other than McDonald wins, McDonald will not make that spot. If those teams that control their destiny win, McDonald will not make that. So it's a very hard game for them this week. I think they can potentially come in here and steal it from Jackson Milton to end the season, but I don't know where they're going to fall come postseason.
Scoreboard watch, man. It's not a good spot when you're this time of year and you got to watch scoreboards, see what's going on.
Right.
Depending on other people, it's not a good feeling.
Next game, though, for us, the Leopards of Liberty. They've shot off 4 in a row as well, as they are now 4-4 on the season, with Garfield coming down in week 10. Actually, they're going to Garfield in week 10, I should say. A game that, hey, don't count them out just yet, but, it was a good win for them, 48-20 over LeBray. And I really just have to say, I continue to be impressed with this team. And I know I've made my case from the past couple of weeks, especially since I saw them. I've been kind of sold that, hey, this team might do something. I don't know what it's going to be that they do, but I think that there's an opportunity with this young squad that they can take a season like this and make something out of it here at the very end. The only downside, if they lose, the only spot they can get in the postseason, if they lose to Garfield, is the 16 seed, in which they'd have to face South Range in week 1, which doesn't look good. That pretty much ends any chance of them doing anything for the postseason, right?
Yep.
Or anything to take next season. They might not get a point against South Range. They're that good. But if they can pull the upset against Garfield, hand Garfield their 3rd loss, well, Liberty can make it up to an 11th spot. And if they can get all the way up there, I don't know, maybe 12. But I don't know how much I like them against a team like Edison or Perry or any of those top teams, but never say never, because this has been a different team since their quarterback change. And I think when you can go in there and you can say that this team has had a real turnaround at one point in the season, you kind of just have to throw that record away and say, all right, what have they done? What are they actually doing outside of the scores in these games? Well, they're controlling the football, controlling time of possession, winning by 20 plus. They've done that twice. Only been in a single-digit game once, and that was an upset over Champion, who they've sent in a downward spiral. I think this game for Liberty has just continued to paint the picture of this is a much improved team for the back half of the year. Now, I don't know if they can go into Garfield and take it. That's a very hard place to go into, but maybe because of what Brookfield just did in that stadium, there's going to be a lack of confidence and, maybe a lack of preparation for Garfield, under preparing for Liberty in this game, going, oh, that's just Liberty. They haven't beaten anybody. And they under-prepare. Maybe that gives Liberty the shot. Leopards will take anything they can get in that game this weekend. I'm excited to talk about it when we get there. I think that there's potentially some rat poison for Garfield in that game.
I'm glad you said. I was just about to say that before you said that. I'm not. We'll talk about this game later in the week, but a Liberty team that's playing with. You can make an argument that they've been playing with house money these last few weeks because they ripped off 4 in a row, put themselves in this conversation after their 0-4 start, even their record up. And like you said, and Brookfield held Garfield to 14 points. So yeah, they might have shown some people something. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but at this point of the year, anything weird things happen. So, and
with the amount of athletes that Liberty has in that program, any given week, it really is a true statement for a team like that. And I continue to be impressed with them. And you say playing with house money, and I normally hate the playing with nothing to lose, but this team, I really think, what do they have to lose? If they lose this week, sure. Yeah, they lost. It was just another season for this team of a rebuilding program. But if they win, well, then they're in the playoffs. And if they win again, it's just massive upset after massive upset for Liberty. And they are playing with nothing to lose. There is no tomorrow for this team. They are not guaranteed a postseason spot. They are not a team anybody will talk about for the next 20 years. They I hate to put it this way, but they are nothing. And I think they're playing better as that underdog, as that, hey, we aren't supposed to be in games. We aren't supposed to be winning this. We're playing with a freshman quarterback for the 2nd year in a row. And we've turned it around with this freshman quarterback, and he's lost once. This is all momentum to take into next year. This season does not matter for Liberty. It really doesn't. And I know people will go, oh, every season matters. No, it doesn't. It matters in the fact that this is a momentum building year for Liberty. And if they can keep the majority of this roster intact with Lawrence Watson at the helm and not let him get, swarmed up by some other recruiting team in the region like they did with DC Farrell, and they can keep this guy in the program, which I think they can, it's going to be a really big run that Liberty can make next year. But they have nothing to lose at the moment. I love the way they're playing football.
And like you said, I don't always like that term either of they're playing with nothing to lose. Obviously, every game, I don't care what your record is, if you have a game to play, you want to win it. But, after that little bit of a tough stretch, starting out 0-4, and they lose to some tough teams with Girard and Brookfield and Lakeview, who's decent or below average, but they were at that point, they were not bad. But and then you beat the team you're supposed to beat. You always got to do that, Alec. We always talk about it. Beat the team you're supposed to beat. See where you can go against better competition. They've done that. So to get this point of the year, and that's what we're talking about. That it kind of reminds me. We'll see how the game goes later in Major League Baseball playoffs. It reminds me of your Cleveland Guardians team. That they're like that. It's the fact that different situation, but it's a young team where a lot of changes. Not a whole lot of people expect a young roster. Some changes were made, and they get to this point, still have a chance. So we'll see what happens with them. But regardless of what happens, like you said, it's been a good turnaround for them.
Right. And Mike, for Liberty, I think they'll take if they make it to the postseason in a 16 seed and go up against South Range, it will be Yankees versus Guardians uphill battle. I mean, that's exactly what that plays out to be.
Hey, it's pretty much spot on.
Right. I mean, you give them no shot to beat them. I mean, not a lot of people were giving the Guardians, half a game in this. And, Derek DiMattia definitely would be looked at as the Jose Ramirez of Liberty if they can somehow make this a possibility and maybe pull off an upset here. Maybe pull off an upset against South Range. I mean, it would be underdog super story all the way for Liberty. I hope they can get it done because the storylines would be great, and I really love supporting these Leopards, man. It's a great school. They've given me some great opportunities over there to see them play a couple of times. So always a great time when I head over to Liberty. But on the other side of this, Mike, for LeBray, it just has continued the push of a down year. It is the start of a rebuild. I think clearly we'll see what they decide to do in the offseason. If there's a coaching changes. Obviously, I mean, they had lost, I think, 2 or 3 players from their crew from John Armani's squad. They transferred out when he left as well. So, obviously this was a team we didn't expect to see a ton out of. I don't think anybody expected this much fall off. I don't know what week 10 is going to hold for them against Campbell. But I think maybe the one bright side here, they put up 20 points. That was the most points they put up in the entire season. So, you have that one number for you. You put up 20. And 20 points, by the way, was pretty much about a third of what they've scored in the season. They've scored almost 70. They put up 20 in this final game. If anything, I take that as one minor moral victory. You did more in this game than you did against anybody else. Take that into the final week against Campbell and do it again. Put up 20 points. I don't care if you win. Put up 20 points again if you're LeBray in that final week.
20 or more.
Do like something to finish it out.
Yeah, 20 or more. Do something positive. I mean, obviously you want to get this win to finish it out, but let's give us something here. Kind of, make things feel good in this rebuild. I know I sound repetitive with this with rebuilding teams, but give us something where just the players or fan base or whatever, give somebody something to think this team is going somewhere in this rebuild, and it might actually not take as long as some people are talking about. So whether it's a win this week, a good defensive effort, good offensive effort, good overall effort, give us something here to close it out because it's been a rough year for them.
Yeah, for sure. Next game up, it was a big one that everyone had their question marks going into, but ultimately it was the Rockets getting it done against the Ridge in the Ridge. They take down the Rams 21-7. And Mike, I've been very high on Louisville all season long. This made for a makeshift MVAC Scarlet Tier Conference title game, which Louisville ended up taking. This is Louisville's first conference title in football since 2002. The 20-year streak has come to an end. Hallelujah. Finally, they get this done. I mean, long time coming. When you go that long without a conference title, I mean, they were right to have doubters, I think, all year long because they hadn't been able to get it done. But you come in, you see Vinny Balone in this final game, which honestly was his worst game probably on the season completion-wise. He was held to just 50%, so give a lot of credit to that Rams defense, but give a lot of credit to the Rockets defense, kind of the unsung heroes of the season, because you look at them every game and you go, well, they're not holding up their end of the bargain. Well, teams are scoring 16 points against them on average, and obviously you've seen some of their big games. I mean, Waterloo got 26, Jackson Milton got 20, Springfield had 24, and pretty much everybody is scoring twice on them. But yet, in the game that mattered most, in the biggest game of the season, guess who shows up but the defense? And I think that's the part you have to look at for Louisville, and you go, now you are a postseason contender. Now we look at you. You were the real deal because your defense just showed up when your offense, I'll say, had a less than average game, which is true because they've averaged, I believe, almost 40 points a game this year, and they only put up 21. And guess who also showed up? The ground game. Rivero Ocasio finally got to get some action, only 8 times, but he puts in 56 yards. Vinny gets on the ground as well. He goes 49. And once again, it's Matthew Lucido getting 6 receptions, 2 touchdowns, 107 yards. Bunowski made the front picture on the paper of the Vindicator. He got 84 yards and a touchdown. I saw that one out there. But it's just, you looked at this team all season. They got 4 tackles for loss. They got 2 sacks. Vinny Ballone grabs yet another interception. And now I think I look at it. I'm going to double check this to make sure. But Vinny Ballone, through 9 games with just 1 more left on the schedule, has not thrown an interception all season long, and he has 44 touchdowns on 70% completion. This is an insane performance we're seeing right now from this kid. And his numbers have fallen off in the back half of the season as temperature gone down. No longer on pace to get up there and, into the top 5 like, he had an opportunity to. So maybe the records won't be shattered at the end of the year for him, but he is still, without a doubt, the single best quarterback in the history of Louisville football. Maybe the best player in general. Yeah, just the single best athlete to ever come out of this high school. Now, I don't know a ton about him. I don't know who they've had. I'm not from the area, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find a guy that's done more for a school. I mean, they win their first title in 20 years with him and this phenomenal crew. Not just Ballone, obviously, but it's been a great crew. I mean, this might be the best wide receiver core they've ever had. I mean, you could take Bunowski and Lucido alone and probably take this team anywhere and win a lot of games with just those 2 wide receivers and Vinny Ballone. And then you add in 4 other guys that can catch the football well and take it big. This has been a monumental season for Louisville. They have Western Reserve in week 10. They're already a 2 seed. They will not get the 1. I think we all expect them to finish this thing out strong and take an undefeated season into the postseason. They would be an undefeated that I don't think JFK is anymore. Let me just double check on that. Yeah, JFK lost. So Louisville would be the only undefeated team in Region 25. We have a couple other undefeateds in Division 7. Just checking. But at the moment, they're one of 3 undefeateds left in the postseason. Antwerp and Waynesville Goshen are the other 2. But they're not even top seeded. They've had super easy strength of schedules. Winner of Region 25 wins the championship in my eyes. Yeah. It has been the best conference. It's been the strongest division. The strongest region. And it's either going to be JFK, Louisville. It has to be one of those 2. They've each played so great this year that I think it comes down to them. And it's almost been too good so far of a season for Louisville not to end this thing with some gold on them. They need some gold.
It would be, sad to see that not happen after potentially to have a chance here this 5 week to go 10-0 and to see that not happen. You wouldn't feel good about it for them. But their high-powered offense, like you said, I don't know too much about the school history either, but it's got to be one of the best offenses they've seen. It's hard to, like you said, it's probably hard to find a better one. But the last couple weeks I was kind of talking about with them, we know they could air it out. We know they can do pretty much whatever they want through the air, but let's even things out and see what they can do with the run game. And they've answered that the last couple weeks. So going to this last game and, after this against Western Reserve, going into the playoffs too, I don't really have too many questions for Louisville.
Yeah. Well, on the other side, Ridge, it wasn't the game that they wanted to have. Definitely a disappointing end there, but
Yeah.
they're going to finish 8-2. They have Waterloo next week, and I think that they're going to go in, they're going to steamroll, and they're going to be set up well for the postseason. Obviously, they'd like to sit a little bit better than where they are at the moment, but it's a Mineral Ridge team people are going to continue to look at and go, they're going to be just fine. They're going to finish, looks to be 6-12 is where their ranking will finish. I bet on the higher end of that if I was a betting man, and you could. I would say that they'll probably get one home game, and I hope that they can do it. I hope that they can get some wins in here and give themselves a nice run. They deserve it. They have some really talented athletes over there. I hope to see them get it done.
Yeah, and like you said, they didn't have that opportunity, but there's a lot of things they learned about themselves in that Louisville loss too. So we know they're a good team. It's not like we're going to look at them any different after that loss because Louisville's had the great year like we've been talking about. But that was one of the better games of the weekend. It was close, but Mineral Ridge, they're still got some things to play for. They got other things on their mind too.
Well, I promised 16 games today. We're not going to hit that. Yeah, we're actually way short. We only got to 9 games today, so we're going to keep 7 in our back pocket. Talk about it tomorrow along with a little bit of playoff volleyball. Game 1s are tonight for the opening round. You can catch, I don't know if we'll actually have any games on the network here tonight of it. It looks like we will. Wellsville versus Toronto. Nope, that was Saturday. Never mind. I don't see any on the schedule for tonight. So either way, best of luck to all teams competing in the postseason. We wish you best of luck. We wish you glory, nothing but it. Yeah. And when those games potentially come available, you can catch them here on ysnlive.com. But I've been Alec Brennan. That's Mike Wolfgang. Matt Morrison joins the show for the first time this week on tomorrow's edition of the Casual Sports Podcast on your sports network. Power coming up next, so stay tuned.